let me invite my first panel for today's session. Please welcome Deepika Garg, Global Head HR for Elevate Group Global. A big round of applause, please. The next in the panel, we have Shamima Akhtar, Chief Human Resources Officer for Niloy Motors. The next, we have Shashwat Mitra, Global HR Head for KPIT Technologies. I'll request Shruti to join me. Shruti Jivaraj, VP HR for Barkhat Group. So, welcome everybody and thank you very much for joining us for this panel discussion, and we all are looking forward for your wonderful insights on this particular subject. And of course, the topic which we have for today's panel discussion talks about thriving transformation, employer branding tactics from the changing world of work. There were a few points, as a panel when we discussed that these are the pointers wherein we would want you to speak and, talk about. There were certain points and certain elements which we thought that, as a moderator for this session, I would love to throw some light on these topics, these subjects, and of course we'll build up from there. People need people. Business need business. Brand needs a brand. One brand supports another brand, and that's what HR as a transformation business talks about. A good brand is a promise to deliver, and a promise to deliver continuously is what the theme is all about. Today, customer experience is a key element for every employer branding. And the moment we talk about employer branding, of course, your statistics, your branding, employer branding, all this put together opens a huge canvas to multiple questions. And of course, I wanted to use Alice's story because I thought, that story will definitely connect with each one of us. And we will now move on to the questions to our panel, because here the dynamics are changing on daily basis. Forget about, a particular trend. If you see, everything is changing at a huge rapid force, and things are not the way we expect it to be. So with this, we'll have our first question for today, which will come to Deepika. So Deepika, before I move on to the question, I would want you to have your opening remarks on this particular subject.
Thanks, Anand. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I was reading an article from McKinsey a couple of weeks back, and quite funnily, the 2 pointers that actually came out of that particular article was actually something that we are discussing today. One was actually about the organizational lifespan, and second one was about the thriving in transformation. What it said was, almost 90 years back or 100 years back, the lifespan of any organization used to be almost 90 to 100 years itself. Meaning even if you're not doing any transformation for 90 to 100 years time, you will be able to survive. Quite surprisingly, since 2010, if any organization is not able to make any changes in 17 years time, it's gonna collapse. So transformation itself has become such an important topic. And the second point of that, which was about everybody is trying to transform these days, but out of those transformation, only 70% organizations are actually not able to make it, but only 30% are the ones, which are surviving, and a few of them are actually thriving. So when you were actually talking about, Alice in Wonderland, I was actually sitting there and smiling because this used to be one of the words that we used to use almost every day. I have been working in this startup and scale-up ecosystem for last 10 years. And no matter how many onboarding sessions I have done, even if I'm talking to the CEO and he'll be like, hey, how do you feel? I was like, I'm feeling like Alice in Wonderland. And there were 3 connotations, why we used to use this particular analogy there. One, Alice was very brave, right? She had an infinite mindset. That is something which is extremely important when you're working in this kind of world which is transforming every day. Second thing, you have to look for your tribe. So when that cat actually told Alice, like, that you go this side, and that means, like, she was able to find a tribe, somebody, like, on whom she can trust on. And that's something that we do. When we are working on any transformation, any change, we look for people who speak our language, who understand the complications that we are going through. So infinite mindset is something which is extremely important. Finding your tribe is something which is extremely important. And third, like, last but not the least, uncertainty. So when you're working in a transforming world, and same thing, like, happened with Alice, she was making herself uncomfortable. So that uncertainty was the only certainty that she had, and that's how the world has become these days. And that's what we are doing. So, like, your story was actually, like, quite apt to this topic that we are discussing today. Thank you.
Great, I'm glad you liked it. Thank you very much. Can I request Shashwat to please share his thoughts on this topic?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you. All right, that's a welcoming change, and it really feels great. So I would like to keep this very crisp from my side. There are two aspects to look at a transformation from an employer branding side, the way I like to look at it. Many times, the market is changing not as fast as how the internal branding scenario has been changing for the organizations. So the question out here is, are we selling the same wine in a different bottle, or are we actually changing ourselves or transforming ourselves and offering something else from an employee value proposition back to the organization or back to the market? So this is a dichotomy which we have to always look out for and address at different times. So that's the first. And the second, the way I would like to look at it is, transformation as a word is loosely used. Sometimes all what you need to do is change, which is a tactic part of it, or you would like to transform, which is a strategy part of it. On which side, how close are you to a tactic or how close are you to a strategy, that in a way defines to your long-term vision that is it a real word transformation. So I think those are some of the opening points to ponder upon.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Can I have Shamima to please share her thoughts?
Thank you. Good evening, audience. It is a nice audience. Okay, so transformation and engagement. I am trying to linkage the two terms, that is transformation, true transformation and engagement. So what is my experience on that? I am from Bangladesh, and the country is now in growth stage, and the organization is growing day by day. And transformation is a part of our everyday life right now. So the engagement and experience of employees and the transformation part, we are trying to balance. So that is highly challenging for us again, to manage all the data analytics, all the challenges right now coming and the system is enriching right now. So this is my takeaway regarding the transformation and the employee engagement. Thank you.
Great, thank you, thank you. May I request Shruti to please throw light? Shruti is from Barakat Group. I'm sorry for miss.
No, that's okay. That's absolutely okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And first of all, let me thank the organizing committee and our moderator here. Thank you, audience and listeners, to be so, you all have been so patient. You know, I know it's sometimes difficult to just sit back and listen to speakers. We as panelists will try our best to make this interesting for you. So let's imagine a scenario just as what we are in today, be it a formal or an informal setup. When you meet somebody around in a group of, let's say, 100 of us or 200 of us who are sitting here, and you ask someone, where do you work, right? The moment the person mentions their company name or the brand name or the business name, you then try and ask more questions if the brand resonates with you personally, right? If the ethos of the brand somewhere connect with you internally. And imagine a scenario, if the brand is unknown, someone says, I work at XYZ, and you've never heard of the brand, or you do not know what the brand does, you will not make an attempt to probably elicit more answers from that person, right? It will be just an exchange of pleasantries and you'll move away. right? So that brings me to an interesting scenario. And what I mean here is today businesses are actually trying to align 3 dimensions together. One being the employer branding, 2 being the consumer branding. And when I say consumer branding, I'm talking about B2B and B2C. And 3rd being the corporate branding. So organizations are trying to align these 3 dimensions. They're trying to put it at the heart of everything that they do, the way they communicate to audience at each of these levels. Because imagine the impact it has. It has a multifold impact, and of course, all of this leads to growth of the organization, right? So it's a very interesting shift that today organizations have made as far as EVP or, this term as such is concerned. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful insights. Now, without taking much of the time, let me move on to our first question, which I'll come back to you. So, what does thriving transformation in the current scenario of employee branding means to you?
So as I said, I have been working in the startup scale-up ecosystem for almost past decade. Definitely have been more catering to this particular ecosystem. There's no set formula, which actually says that, hey, if you do this thing, you're going to thrive. Hey, if you do this thing, this is not going to work out. So what we have been doing is we have been experimenting a lot on different types of strategies, tactics, for example, at times. If it works, then we keep it as a blueprint for future. If it doesn't work out, then we just share our learnings and we move on. There have been certain scenarios where we have seen a lot of successes coming, and there have been a few commonalities, let me put it this way, based on different kind of organizations and projects that I have taken on, either as a leader or I have been a participant or in whichever capacity. There are 5 things that we have been doing in the past, which has actually shown that if we are doing those things rightly, then we are most likely going to thrive in the overall transformation journey, making sure that our employer branding is staying intact. One of them is and as you were saying, that change and transformation are 2 different words which people have started using so loosely these days that it's scary, to be very honest. So what we always say is you start with the assess. We always talk about where we want to be as a company, but I think the right point to start here is hey, where we are. If the gap is a bit too much, then it becomes really scary for all the people who are trying to cross that journey in a way. So as a company, we have always tried to do that assessment, and we have tried to be very transparent about that assessment, that hey, this is where we are, and we share it very openly with our people. Second part, which is extremely important, which actually helps not only us in thriving that particular transformation journey, but also helps us in creating a very strong talent brand as well as employer brand, is the aspiring part. And when I say aspire, sometimes we are given this particular notion that if you're working in HR or if you are working as a leader, you need to make people happy. Sorry, I don't agree with that. Your happiness lies with you. You have to find your North Star in whichever company you're working with. As an organization, as an employer, or as a leader, it's my responsibility to take care of you from your mental well-being perspective. But what makes you happy? Hey, this is not my responsibility. So what we try to do when we are talking about the aspiration part is there are 5 different dimensions that we always try to cover when we are trying to talk about the transformational journey. One is, make sure that you are talking about how does this particular transformation or a small change is going to impact the customers. How does this impact your overall organization? How does this impact the industry? How does it impact you as an individual? And how does it impact your team? Depending upon the role that you are in that organization, you find your North Star, because we use our people as our employer, our evangelists for our employer branding. And most of the times, that's what we have seen, when people are leaving the room, if we have understood and if we have covered all the aspirations, they leave very happily and they leave very motivated. Third part that we try and do here is that, once we have assessed where we are, once we have aspired, where we want to be, et cetera, we try and act on those things. So we always try and see, what are the different processes needed, what are different kind of skill set, et cetera, needed. We try and advertise those things within the group. We try and find some role models, because people need their tribe, right? So fourth thing is like, we always keep on announcing, because transformation is such a, sorry for my word, it's such a shitty journey, it's such a tiring journey that people really need to see those like, easy wins. So we always talk about those things and we celebrate like, those small wins as such. Combining that part with the employer branding as such, because that's the main topic here. I always say this thing to like, to all my teammates, to all my leaders, that be very selfish about the kind of people that you want to, that you want to attract. Because those people are gonna be your teammates at the end of the day, right? So people like, who are very open for change, because we need people like, who are open to change, who are open to like, transformation, who are very adaptable. So I can go on and on, but looking at the time here, I think I should be stopping here and I'll pass it on to my fellow team.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I would love to hear from each one of you, but in the interest of time, I know Bhutan Saab is going to beat me if I extend the time. Let me move on to the next panelist, the next speaker for today. I'll request Shashwat to please throw some light on this particular subject, which definitely is very close to my heart as well. What are the current trends you see in a current employer branding in your line of work in the last, maybe some examples from your career or, something which you have recently experienced? We would love to hear from you on that. Fantastic. You can take this.
Fantastic. Yeah, this works. All right. So I want to keep it crisp. I think the world is moving down into clear 2 or 3 words. And employer branding is not a large statement. It is what I see myself into it. So it's hyper-personalized. That's the first. The second, jobs are more transactional if you want to. Career is more long-term. What each and every talent is trying to look out for is a purpose, whether they have a career or they have a job. So that's the second part. The third, what I want to kind of put across and open it for everyone out there, there is a ongoing awareness which is moving in across on what's my purpose and how am I able to apply? Am I being utilized well, completely? Am I able to make a meaningful impact to the organization and to myself? So I think these are the 3 key things which on the employer branding side becomes absolutely core to everyone. So purpose, hyper-personalization, and the application of things. Now, I personally from my experience, and let me take from my current organization at KPIT, our vision statement, the way we kind of crystallize down on an employer branding is to go down to the last level of an engineer and try and understand, today, whatever you did, was your day's job aligned with what our vision is? And if the answer to that is assertive or otherwise, we try to constantly look out that how can we align what the last nth person does with what our vision of the organization is. So I think these are some of the ways to kind of look out for. Personally, from my experience, it has been always towards looking for a purpose within a job and then find and make a career out of that. I'll pause with that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me now move on to Shamima. Shamima, we would love to hear from you some, critical case studies or some examples from your career where, employee branding framework was a key element and particularly keeping this subject into consideration. Your thoughts on that? And because, you have a global presence and you have a rich experience there, we would love to understand your perspective on this particular, market which you are a part of.
Right. Thank you, Anand. In my total 17 years career, I am working in automobile industry, Bangladesh. And in last 6 years, we basically started employer branding rigorously. At first, we started do some simple employer branding strategy, moving to university and do some institute and university do some activities like benefit marketing and what we are doing, what is our culture. But step by step, we started to develop our EVP. And under this EVP, we make a slogan that is we care for you and your family. And we strongly marketing it. And under this EVP and that slogan, we created some unique policies like community incentive policies, wellness policies, and psychological counseling policies, counseling sessions, parenting sessions for employee, family, as well as for the parents as well. And also we started a grief leave policy. It's a paid 5 days policy. If anyone in immediate family member died, then individual should go for the 5 days leave to grieve. So you know what happened then? In last 6 years, we after having a feedback session and have a survey, we found that our talent retention increased 20% and our recruitment cost reduced to 12%, and employee satisfaction increased to 25%, and the productivity increased to 12%, and make our brand as the most loved brand in the country. So that is the unique platform that we can use employer branding as a unique stepping stone to make the brand more visible in the society and in the globe. Thank you.
Great, wonderful insights. Thank you so much, Shamima. Can I request Shruti to throw some light on this particular subject? I'll give you my mic. So Shruti, the world today is undergoing a change. Factors like remote working, AI, automation, gig economy has been, very much widely used from an employee branding perspective. Would request your thought process, your certain, inputs on this particular subject.
Sure. So I think clearly it's a multifaceted challenge which requires a holistic and proactive approach. And I'll take each of the elements that you've spoken about, but I'll use simple English so that I don't have to elaborate in the interest of time. First one being remote working. I think the 2 C's that I can think of when you talk about remote working here is communication and having connectivity, because isolation can be a big hit for employees in this condition. Then let's look at automation or AI for that matter. Again, what does it require? It leads to job role changes, skill requirements, and therefore reskilling and upskilling becomes of primary focus for organizations. And the third one being gig economy, right? Where you're talking about temp staff or project-based resources. Here again, they can become your brand ambassadors if you handle them with good transparency and enough communication is done with them. So I think it's a holistic approach, leaving your resources empowered, supported, and engaged is what I would say so.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, my wonderful panel, for giving these insights to it. And of course, in the interest of time, we would move on to the end of this panel discussion, but wanted to sum up, this particular discussion which we had. As a branding, today, from a HR point of view, today, retention is the new recruitment. And that's how, a good brand is a promise, and that's how, as a HR, we need to take care of your employee value proposition and our teams, overall as an organization. So with this, I'll wind up our panel discussion, and we can move on to the next segment. May I